Happy Tuesday, everybody. It is Melinda Weather Chat here, coming at you from South Central Illinois at my home base. Wanted to cover the potential for what could be a rocky day tomorrow in portions of much of Central Illinois, into portions of Dixie Alley, much of the Mississippi River and Ohio confluence region as well, here in the Dixie Alley and Midwest area. First and foremost, while I base my forecast discussions out of Central Illinois, I wanted to make it very well known that there is level 4 out of 5, a moderate risk of severe weather potential in the dark red shaded area there. So if you are in areas from Evansville, Owensboro, Paducah, Marion, Carbondale, as far north as Mount Vernon, into portions of the southeast portion like West Plains, Missouri, Poplar Bluff, Little Rock, Arkansas, Memphis, Tennessee, Jackson, Mississippi, including areas including Mayfield, Kentucky. Please keep in mind you need to make sure you have a way to receive weather notifications and alerts, whether it's via phone call, text message, or weather radio tomorrow, because there is a greater likelihood for some organized severe weather in this darker shaded area. So now that I've covered that moderate risk area, that's level 4 out of 5, we have level 3 out of 5, which is an enhanced risk, kind of similar to the other day on Sunday, March 30th. We have another enhanced risk of severe weather in Illinois. So I'm going to cover some of the reasoning behind that, but first and foremost, I want to look at my forecast data, and I'm going to look at my 500 millibar layer of the atmosphere, and I want to see what's going on with the whole contiguous United States. I want to see what's going on in the upper level layers of the atmosphere. This just gives me a really good idea of what upper level winds are looking like at 18,000 feet, and this helps me determine where storm systems could possibly be, where disturbances in the upper level winds of our jet stream are located, and where they're going to eject out, and potentially where a low pressure system might be as well. So I'm going to keep dragging my cursor over here, and we're going to see this very deepening area of low pressure generate in the Midwest here in the Great Plains. So as you see, kind of these darker shaded to light shaded colors, that purple and red, this is indicative of nearly 112 knot winds aloft in the 18,000 feet above our heads. So this tells me we have some very strong upper level winds aloft, and we see that wrapping around that area of low pressure here. So we're going to see that tighten up, especially once it reaches the peak of the northern plains, in the Great Plains that is. And in this wake, though, we see a very nice 5 p.m. to 11 a.m. oriented negative tilt in our atmosphere here in this trough region. So trough is a dip in the jet stream or upper level wind belt in our atmosphere. So to make it very easy to understand, we see this belt of winds in our jet stream shifting around quite often whenever we have differences in air temperature. So we have differences in air masses, essentially. So in this general area, cooler, more unseasonably chillier temperatures are going to exist. Meanwhile, down here, where we see this bowl upside down U shape, this is indicative of a ridge. And a ridge is generally where high pressure is going to dominate that region, and it's going to allow warm air to rise and surge ahead of this convergence area where the cold air meets this warmer air on the backside. Therefore, this is going to cause a disturbance in the atmosphere, and as the disturbances approach any region, it's going to have an ejection zone, and that ejection zone is basically where you think about where you're doing, think of a fidget spinner. When you do that fidget spinner, it's going to spin around really, really fast, and if you spin it counterclockwise, the wind, you're going to feel like almost like a little breeze from it kicking off on the right-hand side of it, and that's kind of the same concept. So, really cool, fascinating thing about the upper level winds is it's just Mother Nature seeking equilibrium. She's looking for areas of high pressure and going to low pressure, because that's what she does in thermodynamics and physics. So we're going to drag that a little bit forward, and you can see that jet stream is still pretty spinny, pretty kicking, and just look at that deepening area of low pressure, and also look at that trough. Look at that incredible backward tilt axis on that. That's just incredible. But that negative tilt that we have, that really strong kink and that disturbance there, that's going to cause some really strong winds aloft to eject out, and we really have that potential for severe weather in this main area here for that exact reason, okay? Because disturbances are going to eject out winds, allowing lift, which is warm air, to surge out ahead in a warm sector. So now that I've covered that, I'm going to go into my NAM nest, which is my 3K NAM model. I'm going to change my sector view, making sure I'm over here in Illinois in the Midwest, which I am. That's good. So now that I have a general understanding of what's going on with the upper level winds, I'm going to look at my surface products here. I want to see what's going on with my temperature. So right now, we obviously, as of very late this morning, some pretty chilly temperatures. We were pretty chilly, unseasonably almost at this point, because we've become so used to this past couple weeks, this warmer stretch of weather. But ahead of this frontal boundary, we're going to see an influx of warm temperatures. So temperatures are going to spike up into about the 70s, mid 70s, and some of the farther south area, south out of here, but mid to lower 70s for the most part ahead of that warm sector there in that darker red, orange, and yellow shaded area. So warm temperatures coming. We obviously know that there is a difference in air temperature. So we have an air mass collision and convergence there. Convergence is going to help create some lift as well ahead of that frontal boundary. Therefore, I want to see how much moisture we're bringing in, because when we know we have southerly flow bringing in some warm air, generally with that, because of the Gulf moisture, we have dew points to look at, and we're going to see how much moisture we have. So dew point temperature is looking at generally how much we have available moisture content wise to cause some clouds to form. And dew point temperature is the temperature at which a parcel of air becomes wet or saturated, reaches 100% humidity. But we have to look at some things such as not just dew point, but we also have to look at lifted indices as well. This is going to be the capability of a parcel of air to rise and how unstable that section of that atmosphere is for it to rise at the surface. So we can see we have some pretty decent lifted indices of about -4 to -6 approximately in central Illinois, as we see that surge of mid-60s dew points approach. So pretty juicy, rich air ahead of that frontal boundary. So moisture is essential because we have to have that available amount of water vapor in our atmosphere, and we need dew points to be able to reach its lifting level of condensation in order to be able to create clouds. Well, clouds form through and produce condensation, and when they condensate, they release latent heat, and then as a result, since warm air cools as it rises, it's going to get wet and then fall to the surface as rain. So we have pretty decent dew points. I'm happy to see that. And last but not least, I'm going to look at wind gusts too, because I'm going to show you another reason why we have to consider the threat for damaging winds with some of the storms tomorrow. As that front comes in, check out some of these winds. Some of these are even non-thunderstorm wind gusts as well. This non-thunderstorm wind gust, we have 40 to 50 mile per hour plus wind gusts potentially tomorrow as that frontal system comes through. And in some areas here, we could have a couple areas non-thunderstorm wind gusts of even up to 60, 55, 60 miles an hour. So considerably speaking, as that front comes through with those storms, these are considerably non-thunderstorm wind gusts. So could be some really strong winds circling down from the upper level winds of that atmosphere mixing down. So please keep that in mind. That's going to be gusty winds tomorrow as well. So keep everything, yard furniture, anything that's going to get easily kicked over outside, trash cans, keep them put away. Last but not least, I'm going to finally go over some of my convective products. The convective products are my favorite part, but I know kind of what to think as far as temperature. I know dew point. I know our wind is there. I have a very good understanding of that really strong, deep area of low pressure, about 988 millibars based off other observations I made. So I'm going to do some more of the fine tuning now. I'm going to look at our CAPE, which is our convective available potential energy for central Illinois here. So CAPE is convective available potential energy, and I'm looking at the surface CAPE. The reason being is I want to see, I know I have some decent lifted indices, but I want to see where that best convective parameter is going to be. And this just gives me a general understanding when we get into early afternoon, basically about 1 to 3 p.m. tomorrow, we're going to see that peak afternoon heating take place in those lower 70s to mid 70s. And right about there is where we peak out. Those darker green, brown, copper shaded areas with the yellow, it's going to be indicative of some stronger cape. And at the surface, we don't need too much, but the stronger those values are, we have the better likelihood for thunderstorms to be able to rise up much quicker into the atmosphere, therefore generating some stronger updrafts. So I'm going to leave that at about, I'm going to shift back here to about, let's go to 6 p.m. here. We'll just set it at 6 p.m. So 6 p.m. I'm looking at roughly 1,500 to no greater than 2,000 joules per kilogram of energy available at the surface out ahead of that frontal boundary. So I have a generally moderate, weak to moderate, mild instability there, at most moderate instability. So I have a general understanding that I do have some lift there for some storms, and they have enough energy to be able to, work with not super strong instability, but just enough to get them going due to that convergence. And then I'm going to look at my most unstable cape. Oh, whoops, wrong one. So I'm going to go ahead and look at my most unstable just to get a general idea. I considered my surface cape, but I'm going to look at most unstable to see the full extent. So most unstable, we are looking at generally pretty stronger amounts aloft. So we have that wind energy, that kinetic energy. We also have to consider our thermal energy. So we have those really nice warm temperatures, but we have surface cape at about 1,500 to 2,000 joules per kilogram maxed out there, and that's its peak. And then we get into some really, really sharp cape values, especially in the I-57 to I-70 corridor here, especially at about, getting close to, let me go back here. So at about 1 o'clock to 6 p.m. there, that's when we begin to peak out on that, okay? So like I said, we're not necessarily seeing a massive extent, but early tomorrow morning, the reason I wanted to show you this isn't even before our big event. Could be potentially looking at some stronger storms in the early morning hours. And I'm saying that because there could be some hail potential with some of these. I'm going to look at something really quick. I'm going to do a forecast sounding for early in the morning tomorrow for us in central Illinois. So some storms tomorrow morning, even before the main initial round develops later in the early afternoon, we have to consider that there could be some big hailstones with some of them. So check out this mixing level here. This is the dew point environmental temperature profile, and we can see we have some nice cold air aloft, but we also have some really sharp, steep lapse rates here. So this is how far back our dew point temperature decreases with height. So those steeper lapse rates suggest that we could have some hail potential with some of the storms tomorrow morning. So just before the main event, we could have some hailstones embedded in a couple of the storms. So now that I've covered that, we have some pretty strong, most unstable cape very early part of the morning. So I'm talking as early as, about 6 to 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, and for possibly a noisy morning. So last but not least, we get into the afternoon. Our most unstable cape maxes out at about no more than like 1,500 or so joules per kilogram. So unfortunately, like I mentioned earlier on in my chat, I'm a little concerned that we will not have as strong of thunderstorms, but the potential is still there tomorrow for significant severe weather, especially in the southern portion of Illinois. So tomorrow, please be weather aware, have a way to receive warnings, and most importantly, be capable of receiving alerts, because there is some nestling potential for maybe the chance of an embedded tornado to spin up in a couple of these storms. Areas that I have most concern for are going to be east central Illinois, right about the Edgar County, so Chrisman, Paris, into Vermilion County there. There could be maybe a spin up tornado there tomorrow, okay? So please be aware of the weather. I hope everybody has a good day, and thank you for watching.